speaking with Rick Toledo. He is lead organizer for Students for a Democratic Society here on campus at Cal Poly. Hi, Rick.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing okay. We wanted to check in with you. We heard the news and wanted to see if you can elaborate.
Yeah, so what they did was they sent me like a document that has various conduct charges that they're levying against me. One of them literally appears to be for breaking the rules. So it's I've broken the rules of some kind. So that's one of them. Another one says I interfered with some kind of university event or something that's planned in an area. And then there were some other ones related to that. One of them was specifically looking at like campus workers and saying that I had disobeyed direct instructions from campus employees. So yeah, I think that was all of them. And basically they sent me this conduct document that have all of these things on it. And they told me that I have to go to a conduct hearing regarding these alleged charges on Friday, the 31st at 10 a.m. in the Jolly Giant Commons building on the 3rd floor. And that would be like a hearing where they would either recommend charges if I agree to some kind of consequences, or it would go to a higher hearing at that point. And at that hearing, I'd be able to have an attorney and it would become much more official. This is more like the informal discovery hearing. These are conduct charges at this point.
So it'd be basically a stain on your academic record?
Yeah, it could be as far as expulsion, suspension, some kind of academic penalty, yeah.
Uh-huh. And I know that this kind of stems from an event that you helped organize and a demonstration that took place on campus on October 7th. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us more about how the planning for that unfolded and then versus what took place on campus?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had real problems with the planning because the way that the university does events, they have a space reservation system. It's part of their time, place, and manner policy, and it makes it very difficult for students to have any kind of event on campus. They need special approvals, and you need to be a registered student organization to do bigger events, which my organization, STS Humble, is an RSO, so we're able to do that, but we have to put in space reservation requests or we face penalties. So for the vigil part of our event, we're trying to do a vigil to honor the lives that have been violently taken by the settler colonial state of Israel, financed by our tax dollars and also by our university and by the CSU system, which have direct investments tied to Israel. So we're trying to bring attention to those lives. And just for a simple, peaceful vigil in the quad, we faced resistance. We had requested the space a week in advance, and there was no other reservation attempts for that space. It was completely available. Now, we received an immediate email from the free speech officer, Heather, which claimed that the space was already reserved and that there were conflicts. When pressed on it, and when we provided evidence that there were no other reservations, she immediately said that there were Jewish organizations having a religious event in the same space. When we double checked, they were not. They were having it in a separate space that wasn't too far from there. This is when it became clear to us that they had decided that because we were doing something around Palestine, and because they were Jewish, and more specifically, these were Zionist Jewish groups, that we could not have our event in a completely different space just because it was somewhat nearby. And that became very clear to us because there was no other reason to stop us or to pretend that there was a conflict. And when pressed harder on it, they fell back on a policy that says that if something is not a full 2 weeks in advance, then they reserve the right to deny it for any reason. So they fell back on that when all else had failed, and they've used that to defend themselves legally up until this point. But they have never once been able to answer why it wasn't allowed to be in an unreserved space. And that's why we say that they discriminated against us. They discriminated against us. It was viewpoint discrimination based on the type of activism that we were engaged in. And that's illegal. And it's a complete violation of the TPM policy, because its entire legitimacy rests upon the administrators being neutral, to which they are not neutral in this. We had a march after our vigil. So the vigil went on, we moved to the space they'd asked us to, and we were surrounded by administrators. They put up signs. They made it very uncomfortable for all of the students there. They had a very over-the-top strong presence. And then when we had our march, towards the end of the march, we went through the main quad, which was the space that we had originally asked to reserve. And it was pointed out to everyone when we went through there that there was nothing happening there. There was no other event happening whatsoever. And, we were there for a moment, and then we went back to the starting place for the march. This was towards the end of it. And I believe that they're trying to say that because we went through that space and pointed out that it was unreserved, that we've broken some policies. And more specifically, they've targeted me for it as a leader of the march. I would say that, one, the policy itself is unconstitutional, because they do not have neutrality in this matter. They cannot have neutrality when they have investments tied to Israel in something related to Palestine. They did not have neutrality in the way that they handled the space reservation. And, I think there's a direct conflict there. And I think that anytime you have some higher body telling you when and where you're allowed to speak and when and where you're allowed to assemble, especially on a public university, that is unconstitutional and that's a violation of our rights. So I would say that, and I would also say that any charges that they're levying against me are political and they're discriminatory and they need to be dropped immediately.
As far as the time, place, and manner policy, do you believe that it oversteps boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it oversteps boundaries and it oversteps our rights. The time, place, and manner policies, they originate from corporations that were looking to regulate disruptive activity during business hours. I would say that for a CSU to have a policy that's supposed to only be applicable to businesses is problematic, because we're not a business, we're a school. But it seems like the administrators and the CSU board and everybody else at these higher levels have forgotten that. They don't see us as a school. They see big dollar signs, they see big money in education, and they treat it like a business, and they're trying to use these business policies to repress us, and they're trying to overstep, decades and decades of student activism. This campus has a long and proud history of student activism, to the point where even during the Vietnam War, even the president at the time of our university stood by the students and defended their right to organize on campus. It has always been true that universities are a prime place for this kind of a struggle, for this kind of protest, for this kind of thing, because it's educational, because it's drawing attention to these very important issues. And when you have students coming here to learn about political science, to learn about decolonial theory, to learn about all of these things, history, how can you expect them to not organize around these issues and not have events to educate each other and not have this dialogue? You cannot. So to try to use a corporate policy to bring a hammer down on all of that is completely wrong. And furthermore, that policy can only be constitutional if the parties that enact it are doing it in a way that is completely neutral and unbiased. That is the law. And I would say that they have clearly broken that. And just really, I want people to think about the fact that, can a university that has investments with Israel be neutral in something regarding Palestine? Can a university that has a vested interest in tuition being higher be neutral in a protest regarding tuition hikes? The list goes on and on. How can they be neutral when they have vested interest in these issues? When they have a vested interest in students being quiet and staying where they're told to? They cannot. So I would say it's unconstitutional.